That means we should probably stop talking about vacuuming. Welcome everybody. We're going to just wait a few more minutes for a few more farmers to be able to jump on before we get started. Good morning, everyone, and happy Saturday. This morning, SeCan is going to host a roundtable talking about their new variety update. So I'm going to pass it over to Jim right away. Just a reminder that you guys can put all your questions in the chat or in the Q&A, and Jim, Trent, and Todd will be able to answer all your questions at the end. We are recording this session, and Jim, it's all yours.
Thanks, Caitlin. Just wanted to welcome everyone to a new variety update from SeCan. Just want to run through some of our new wheat and durum varieties and some barley and oat varieties. So we'll run through this pretty quickly, and then we'll be happy to take any of your questions. Typically, when I talk about hard red spring wheat, I'd like to start out with our Czech variety called AEC Brandon. This is just some data from crop insurance in Saskatchewan in 2019 showing Brandon was head and shoulders above other varieties as far as the acreage grown in Saskatchewan, 2.2 million acres. So overall, Brandon's been growing the last few years on close to half the acres of hard red spring wheat in Western Canada. And so it's become the check in the field for farmers. Normally in our Saskatchewan seed guide, we can see Carberry here on the left is our Czech variety in our seed guide because it's used in registration trials as a Czech. Brandon came out a few years after Carberry and was like an improvement over Carberry because it had a similar look, short, strong straw, and it was also MR for Fusarium head blight, but it had about 5% more yield than Carberry. In the picture, you can see Brandon has kind of a floppy head where Carberry holds its heads very upright and straight. So Brandon is usually about 85 centimeters tall, or on me, I'm about 5'11". It's mid-thigh or close to my pocket in height. So it is reduced height from a lot of the other varieties, the older varieties that were full height. Just another shot of Carberry here on the left, very upright, versus Brandon here being a little more floppy. And you can see again the reduced height versus the variety to the right of it. Just a quick word again on Brandon. You can see some of the parents are Superb and ND744. That was a North Dakota State University line. It's a semi-dwarf, 5% better yield than Carberry, with the MR rating for fusarium head blight. That's moderately resistant. That's our best rating available. It was approximately the same height as Carberry, maybe just a half a day earlier than Carberry, with a very, very good disease package. The only downside on Brandon was it had a poor rating for sprouting resistance. So we're looking for small improvements over Brandon in the upcoming varieties, the new varieties. This is just a shot of Brandon. Very, very good harvestability. So it stood up well, it threshed very easily, and made nice fluffy swaths. And you can see this is just a shot at harvest time. I'm going to move on to a couple of new varieties. Now, this variety, AAC Tisdale, hard red spring wheat, available from SeCan, first time in 2019. AAC Tisdale is, again, an on-semi-dwarf with yield anywhere from 100 to 109% of Carberry. So we're kind of in that zone of the Brandon yield. This would be an early maturing variety with 2 days earlier maturity than Carberry. And this would be our first early maturing variety with the MR rating to fusarium head blight. So that's moderately resistant to FHV fusarium head blight. And it also had this, as it came through registration trials, about 0.7% better yield than Carberry. Sorry, 0.7% better protein than Carberry, with fair lodging and sprouting resistance. So this was a high protein early maturing variety with good fusarium resistance. This variety was named because it fits in that northern prairies region around Tisdale and right across the northern prairies because of that earlier maturity. It's a little taller and a little bit weaker straw than Carberry, about 8 centimeters taller, but still a very good resistance to leaf and stem rust. Just a shot of Tisdale here versus Carberry. You can see the height difference there of the Tisdale versus the Carberry. This is Tisdale versus Brandon. Again, Brandon and Carberry very similar in height. Again, you see that 6 to 8 centimeters taller than Brandon with the Tisdale. Just want to also mention another new variety called Parata, hard red spring wheat out of University of Alberta from Dr. Dean Spainer's program. This has parentage with Splendor, Domain, and CDC Go in the background. Splendor was a very widely grown, early maturing hard red spring wheat across the prairies, but it was a bit tall, a bit weak strawed. So we're looking for that improvement over Splendor. And this variety seems to be doing very well in the northern prairies where they want that early maturity. In our Saskatchewan seed guide, it says that Parata is about 2 days earlier than AC Carberry, but as it came through registration trials, Parata was 4 days earlier than Carberry. And that would equate to being about 2 days earlier than Tisdale. So this early maturity of Parata probably makes it one of the earliest maturing hard red spring wheats on the market right now. A little bit weaker strawed than Carberry and a bit taller, about 5 to 8 centimeters taller than Carberry and Brandon. Parata has a good disease package, but it is has intermediate resistance to fusarium head blight. So that's one thing to watch. It's not for the eastern prairies where they have more risk of fusarium head blight, probably. This is just a shot of Parata up in Edmonton. This is Dr. Dean Spainer at the University of Alberta. You can see Parata here in this picture right beside him is up, and the other varieties around it are much greener, much later. Just to illustrate the early maturity of Parata. Just another shot of it growing in Manitoba. This was just a seed increase there and standing up well. And again, Parata at Swift Current under irrigation in 2017. Just showing it's a little bit taller than Carberry, but still acceptable straw height. And just a bit of data to compare Parata versus Tisdale. You can see Parata was 7% better than the Czech Splendor, just a touch lower than Tisdale, similar height to Tisdale, but and not quite as strong as straw. The lower the number, the better. So Tisdale was a bit stronger strawed. Grain protein was very acceptable, and both had a very high falling number, which usually translates to pretty good sprouting tolerance. I want to move on to two new varieties that were launched in spring of 2020. First one's called AEC Elida VB, and then AEC Warmin VB. The VB stands for varietal blend, and that means these are midge-tolerant wheats, and they have a midge-susceptible variety as a refuge at a 10% level. AEC Elida was developed by Ag Canada Swift Current by Dr. Richard Cuthbert, with Carberry in the background as a parent. This is an Ond Semidorf again, with the Brandon as the refuge. And Elida came through the registration trials with 5 to 8% better yield than Carberry. It's a little bit earlier than Carberry and 6 centimeters taller. The real claim to fame on AEC Elida VB, that it combines 3 very key traits. First one is, this will be our first midge-tolerant wheat with the MR rating, or the moderately resistant rating to fusarium head blight. So that's the best rating for fusarium resistance that we have available in a hard red spring right now. It also is very good for lodging resistance. That means it has strong straw, and it has a very good rating for sprouting resistance. The sprouting resistance rating is usually, or quite often, connected to very good grade retention in the fall. So varieties like AEC Elida, if they do have that very good rating for sprouting resistance, often live a long life because they tend to produce higher grade at harvest. And farmers love to get that #1 grade on their hard red spring wheat. So that's what we're anticipating. That's what we're looking forward to in Elida, with that good straw strength and good sprouting resistance, along with MR rating for fusarium head blight. Protein slightly higher than Carberry. Here's just some data from registration trials. This has a similar yield to Brandon, about 4 or 5% better yield than Carberry. Height was about 6 centimeters taller than Carberry. Straw strength was almost as good, so very much improved over older midge-tolerant wheats like Unity. The lower the number, the better there for lodging, and very good grain protein, and again, this very high falling number, which gives it that very good rating for sprouting. Just a few pictures, Brandon versus Elida. And the next picture, this is down at Winnipeg in 2017. This picture gives you a little bit better idea of the height, so that we have about 6 centimeters taller than Brandon. This is Elida at Saskatoon in 2017. Again, you can see just slightly taller than Brandon, but very acceptable straw height, not nearly as tall as old varieties like AC Unity. Another variety, much more similar to AC Unity, was AEC Warmin VB. This was from Ag Canada Brandon, with Dr. Santosh Kumar as the breeder. This has cane in the background. Cane was a very popular short, strong strawed variety that was grown widely in Manitoba as a hard red spring wheat. This is an Ond conventional height midge-tolerant wheat. It has Tisdale as the refuge. This came through registration trials and into SAS yield trials. It has about 11% better yield than Carberry, so with 3 days earlier maturity than Carberry. So it's an earlier maturing hard red spring with midge tolerance, but it is quite tall. It's 13 centimeters taller than Carberry. But this would be our first full height midge tolerant wheat with the MR rating to fusarium head blight, with low dawn or vomitoxin accumulation. So overall, a good disease package and very good yields in a midge-tolerant wheat. So we can see here a bit of data on Warmin. Again, that 10-11% better yield than Carberry, so very competitive yield, quite tall. You know, we're talking 11 to 12 centimeters taller than Carberry, and not quite a strong straw as something like the Viewfield, but much stronger straw than something like Unity, and still a decent falling number and decent grain protein. So that's Warmin. So this Warmin would be very similar in appearance to varieties like Unity or Jatheria, which were the more conventional full height midge-tolerant wheats. So here's a comparison of, there's Jatheria and Unity. These are both conventional height midge-tolerant wheats, and this is Warmin versus Unity. You can see they look very, very similar. All these varieties, all 3 of these varieties were developed through Agriculture Canada, which used to be in Winnipeg and now is based out of Brandon in their wheat breeding program. I'm going to move on to a couple new varieties which we're very excited about for spring of 2021. These are both hard red spring wheat varieties. First one is AAC Starbuck VB and then AAC Wheatland VB. Again, both varieties are midge tolerant and both have a refuge at 10%, which the VB standing for varietal blend. So just a few pictures to start out with on AAC Starbuck. This is Starbuck versus Carberry under irrigation at Swift Current, and we can see Starbuck here looks very similar to Carberry with just a little bit taller straw. Starbuck was again developed by Ag Canada's Swift Current from Dr. Richard Cuthbert. We can see an American wheat here in the background with varieties like Grandin, Olson, and Caldwell from the States, but it's also got Carberry as a parent. This would be an on Semidorf with the refuge of Brandon. And the yield is quite exceptional on this variety in our Saskatchewan seed guide, showing 13 to 17% better yield than Carberry. So anywhere from 8 to 12% better yield than Brandon. So this is a huge yield jump for hard red spring wheat over the Czech varieties. We're saying this is a game changer because this is like out of this world type of yield potential. And it's a game changer because once you start looking at this variety, you're not going to want to go back to grow older varieties with lower yield potential. So this one changes our yield benchmark for hard red spring wheat on the Western Canadian prairies. This is about 3 centimeters taller than Carberry and just slightly earlier than Carberry. Also combines the MR rating for Fusarium head blight, which is our best available in hard red spring, and gives you low dawn accumulation. It's got slightly weaker straw than Carberry with protein equal to Carberry. So it would be slightly weaker straw than say Brandon, and protein somewhere in that Brandon zone. Has a very high falling number with, it's rated good for lodging and fair for sprouting. So it's an improvement over Brandon for sprouting and similar to slightly weaker straw than Brandon for lodging. Just some data on Starbuck. This yield number is really exciting. And then we start to, that's 14% better than Carberry. Again, probably 9, 10, 12% better than Brandon. This height, exciting, we're radiant around Carberry, probably 2-3 centimeters taller. Strong straw, the lower number, the better there. And we come over to protein, looks similar to Carberry, and then the falling number, 395, that's a high falling number, giving that better rating than Brandon for sprouting. Just gonna look at a few pictures here of Starbuck. This is the retired wheat breeder, Dr. Ron DePau. He's from Swift Current. He's standing in plots at the Curtin Research Farm near Saskatoon and just showing the reduced height of Starbuck versus some of the other varieties around it. Again, Carberry versus Starbuck. We can see it's Swift Current under irrigation, looking very similar in height, maybe slightly taller than Carberry. This is Brandon versus Starbuck at Lethbridge under irrigation, looking similar in height and general overall appearance. Just another shot of Brandon. Brandon is usually mid-thigh to up to my pocket, 85 centimeters tall. We're going to move on to another hard red spring wheat that we're excited about too, AAC Wheatland. And you can see Wheatland and Starbuck look fairly similar. Wheatland is actually just a little bit shorter and a bit stronger straw than Starbuck. And this is, again, Starbuck versus Carberry. So we can see we're looking pretty similar to the Czech. So Wheatland and Starbuck came through the registration trials at the same time, fairly similar to each other, but they have a slightly different adaptation. AC Wheatland, this was growing at North Battleford back in 2018, yielding about 80 bushels per acre for a seed grower there on the Sherabin seed farm. Looking very good, standing up very well. This again is Wheatland at the Kernan farm with Dr. Ron DePau and showing that reduced height compared to other varieties around it. So Wheatland, again from Ag Canada Swift Current from Dr. Richard Cuthbert with Carberry in the background. And again, an on Semidorf with the Brandon as the refuge. This came through into the provincial trials, about 12% better yield than Carberry. So we're looking at 8 to 9% better yield than Brandon. It is just a touch later than Carberry there as it came through registration trials, but it is about a centimeter shorter than Carberry. What we notice on this variety is that it has a shorter and stronger straw than Carberry, which is quite exceptional in a hard red spring wheat variety. So this variety, Wheatland, would be shorter and stronger straw than Starbuck, which would give sort of maximum straw strength and lodging resistance for those in the northern prairies or out in Alberta where they have a little less fusarium risk. This variety is rated intermediate resistance to fusarium head blight. So not quite as good a fusarium resistance as Starbuck, but shorter and stronger straw. Very good rating for lodging. That's about as good as it gets, and a good rating for sprouting. So that again is a big improvement over Brandon. That high falling number and the sprouting resistance are interrelated. So this is just some data from the registration trials back in 2015 to 2017 showing Starbuck had a little bit higher yield than Wheatland, but Wheatland was a bit shorter and a bit stronger strawed, and Wheatland had a slightly higher falling number, which this translates into the good rating for sprouting resistance. So overall, Wheatland maybe for the areas that want maximum straw strength, that have a little bit less fusarium risk. Again, just a picture of Wheatland under irrigation at Lethbridge, showing very good straw strength. I'm going to move on to a couple new durum varieties. We've got just a bit of Saskatchewan crop insurance data from 2019, with Transcend being by far the most widely grown durum variety in Saskatchewan. Strongfield used to be the most widely grown, but acres have moved to Transcend for potential, mainly because it's got one of the better levels of fusarium tolerance and also seems to have very good grade retention. So Transcend has taken over a lot of our durum acres. So we're trying to look for something that will improve on Transcend. We have a new variety. It's been on the market a few years now. AEC Spitfire, developed by Ag Canada Swift Current, had about 10% higher yield than Strongfield, with shorter, stronger straw and similar maturity to Strongfield. Just a shot of Spitfire. Been getting fairly good reviews from farmers because of that shorter, stronger straw, improved yield, and this good lodging resistance. And but it is rated susceptible to fusarium head blight, so farmers are starting to look for other varieties that have slightly better fusarium head blight resistance, but still maintaining very good yields, 8 to 10% better yield than Strongfield. A newer variety that we're actually really hearing very good reviews on, we're quite excited about, AEC Stronghold durum. Just some pictures of Stronghold at the Kernan Research Farm. This is a plot of Stronghold with a sign in front of it, and then Rhonda Powell is standing beside a second replicate of the trial. Stronghold again standing up very well. All the other varieties around it are starting to lodge. So there in the dark brown soil zone near Saskatoon, you can see the clear advantage of something like Stronghold with that strong straw. It has very good lodging resistance, and it really is the only durum with a very good rating for lodging resistance. So it's kind of a no-brainer to be looking at Stronghold if you have any moisture, if you're under irrigation, or if you're in the dark brown soils. This has the best straw strength in durum, stronger straw than Strongfield and Cabrey, very good lodging resistance. About 5% better yield than Strongfield in our Saskatchewan seed guide. But once it gets into the field, farmers have been extremely happy with the yields, especially if they get any moisture. It really stands up, and if a variety stands up, it can really help it to really fulfill its yield potential. It's about 2 centimeters shorter than Strongfield, and it's rated moderately susceptible to fusarium head blight, which is better than some of the older varieties and better than Spitfire. So overall, this variety, Stronghold, has been done extremely well when it's gone out to any farmers with any kind of moisture, any kind of irrigation, or in the dark brown soils. So that's AEC Stronghold. We have a brand new variety called AEC Grainland. There was a little bit of seed sold this spring, but the big launch of Grainland will be in spring of 2021. Just some pictures of this new durum variety. This is southern Alberta, and it's looking very good. I forgot to mention back on Stronghold that it is a solid stemmed, soft fly resistant variety. And also AEC Grainland is a solid stem durum with soft fly resistance. AEC Grainland really is going to be our best solid stem durum for with about 10% better yield than Strongfield. It's got Transcend as a parent. It was developed at Ag Canada Swift Current and has Transcend as a parent. So we're hoping for some of that grade retention that was in Transcend to be inherited here in this variety. Maturity is a little bit later than Strongfield and a slight bit taller, but still has pretty good straw strength and moderately susceptible to Fusarium head blight. So better Fusarium resistance than something like Spitfire. So overall, this would be probably our highest yielding solid stem durum and showing very good results so far with our seed growers. This is 10% better yield than Strongfield here in the registration trials. And so that's showing better yield than older varieties like Brigade and Strongfield. And then also a little bit taller than Strongfield, but quite a bit better straw strength. So even better straw strength than something like Navigator. Navigator was quite a short, strong strawed variety. And very good grain protein, better grain protein than Brigade or Navigator. Just some pictures from Southern Alberta showing the black awns and fairly reduced straw height. Not too tall. And the Grainland versus Stronghold here, you can see a touch taller than Stronghold. Stronghold showing off its shorter straw. Just going to move on and just cover some other varieties very quickly. Just going to cover winter wheat, barley, and oats. A new winter wheat variety called AEC Wildfire is now on the market. This comes out of Ag Canada to Lethbridge. This is a comparison of moats here on the right. That's a typical full height winter wheat from a crop development center, widely grown in Saskatchewan, showing a taller straw than something like AEC Wildfire. Wildfire carries very high yield potential and also this bronze chaff. You can see a white chaff variety here on the left, a white chaff variety here on the right. And Wildfire has kind of a brownish, reddish brown, bronze chaff that is really distinct as it gets toward harvest. You can see here Wildfire, again, is similar to Radiant. Both of them have this bronze chaff, where something like Elevate here on the right or another Czech variety on the left here have the white chaff. Wildfire is a shorter, stronger strawed version, say, than Radiant, but very high yield potential. In our seed guide, Wildfire is about 16% higher yield than something like Buteo. Short, strong straw, and has the MR rating for Fusarium head blight. So this variety also has fairly good winter survival and some stripe rust resistance, medium height, and good lodging resistance. So when you look at the SAS seed guide, AC Wildfire is kind of the no-brainer variety for the top yield in a winter wheat for Saskatchewan at the moment and across the prairies, especially Alberta and Saskatchewan. A little bit weak on some rust resistance for Manitoba. There's some data on Wildfire versus a Czech variety called Moats. Again, that 9% better yield. It's done better than that in Saskatchewan yield trials, but 9% better than Moats. Winter survival, very good as anything out there. Height, reduced height versus something like Moats, and improved straw strength, along with acceptable grain protein for the hard red winter wheat class. Just going to move on to barley for a few minutes. Just want to talk about two new malting barley varieties from the Crop Development Center. This is a picture of Aaron Beatty, our new barley breeder at the Crop Development Center. And he's developed a couple new two-row malt varieties that we're quite excited about. CDC Bow has been on the market now for several years. This would be our strongest strawed two-row malting barley with yield slightly better than Copeland and enzyme levels similar to Metcalf Copeland. So it's gaining acceptance, slowly picking up acceptance from the markets and being trialed both domestically and then overseas and showing some good results. CDC Fraser is a couple years newer and just now getting into the market, and maltsters and brewers have been quite excited about Fraser because of its yield potential, and they're saying it could be our replacement for for the Metcalf or Copeland, or for Copeland right now. So we're quite excited that Fraser will come along and hopefully gain major acres in the future. Just a few pictures of Bow and Fraser. One of the claims to fame on these two varieties is improved yield with much better straw strength than the Copeland Metcalf. This is a picture of the two together standing up well. This is at the Kernan Crop Research Farm near Saskatoon a couple years ago. Just a picture here showing, I'll use my cursor, synergy is starting to lodge in these plots. These plots are growing on summer fallow, so lots of moisture for them to produce high yield. Where the Bow is standing up perfectly, and Fraser looks just a little bit greener in this picture and still standing up very well. Again, just a close up there showing the synergy starting to lodge, where Bow with perfect straw strength. I'm just going to talk a bit more about Fraser for a moment. Has stronger straw than Copeland, Metcalf, and Xena. Not quite as strong straw as CDC Bow, but CDC Fraser has about 14% higher yield potential than Metcalf. So CDC Fraser would be yielding up in the region of CDC Austin two-row feed barley. So one of our highest yielding two-row barley varieties on the market, period. So we have excellent yield potential, improved straw strength, intermediate resistance to Fusarium head blight, which is fairly good. CDC Bow was moderately susceptible, so not quite as good for Fusarium resistance. A little bit later than Metcalf, slightly shorter, very large kernels, very high percent plump, and really providing us with top yield. This has grain protein similar to Copeland, which means it has lower grain protein than something like AC Metcalf. Very good malting traits like low beta glucan, high extract, and has these enzymes between Copeland and Metcalf. So it could become one of our new major two-row malting barley varieties for the future. So we're quite excited about both Bow and Fraser. Fraser being the higher yielding variety, not quite as strong as Bow, but still we have this very good lodging score, which means stronger straw than both Metcalf, Copeland, and even stronger than Xena feed barley, and high plump and very large kernels. Going to move on to a couple new oat varieties. This is just comparing these ORE 3542M to Morgan. Morgan has been widely grown in Saskatchewan, has been the most popular variety actually in Saskatchewan and Alberta for many years. It really is, was grown widely because it stood up and it yielded very, very well. We can see here that these new varieties are supposed to stand up as good as Morgan, but have reduced straw height and have better crown rust tolerance. So that's OR 3542M. Just another few pictures here showing 3542M south of Winnipeg. Compared to Ronald. Ronald was one of our shortest, strongest strawed oat varieties. It was actually a semi-dwarf. These are very similar to that. 3541, a sister line to 3542. Both are available on the market through SeCan members. Just a picture of 3541 standing up very well at portage and giving exceptional yield and standing up well, about 190 bushels per acre back in 2017. And then growing up in Alberta with very good yield again and standing well. This is Jim Dick, the breeder of 3541 and 3542. 3541 and 3542 are sister lines. Both come from a cross of Leggett by CDC Minstrel. Yield right in around Morgan, a little bit earlier than Morgan, and shorter than Morgan oats, with straw strength similar to Morgan. 3542 again, a little bit shorter than Morgan and stronger straw than Morgan, very high percent plump, and crown rust resistant. So just a bit of data on these two varieties. 35, 41, 42. 42 showing a slight bit better yield and slightly stronger straw. Both having very plump kernels. Test weight being slightly higher on 41. So both lines are very, very similar, hard to tell apart, but both seem to be an improvement for shorter straw than Morgan, yield similar to Morgan with better disease package and very good milling quality. That's kind of my summary of varieties for now, and we'll be happy to take any questions that farmers or attendees have at this time.
Well, thank you, Jim. While I wait for our attendees to put some questions in the chat, I'm going to ask Trent and Todd, and Jim, you can answer too. What is the most common question you guys get from farmers? Because I know we have Jim's in Saskatchewan, Trent's in Alberta, and Todd's in Manitoba. So we've got a good representative of Western Canada. So whoever wants to start.
I can. For me, I think it's a loaded question all the time. So what's the best variety for my farm? And the answer is, what are you growing right now? What are your conditions like? There's no perfect fit. And then you overlay environment on it. You try to come up with the right variety for the conditions. And the variety growing might actually be the best fit for you. There's a pile of extremely good varieties out there. It's just kind of weeding through what makes the most sense for your operation and what's grown locally, what you can find, things like that.
For me, it's much the same as Trent. I'm growing X. What will do better than X, which I'm growing on my farm right now? And that's where you start that dialogue of understanding where they farm, what their limitations are, what their biggest challenges are. Is it fusarium? Is it midge? Is it straw management? And try to find the best variety, and always encourage them to, if what they have now is working, that they try a bit of the new one, or rather than going all in year one. And that way they know where to go from there.
Yeah, and if you're going to do a head-to-head, do a real head-to-head. That's not putting two varieties on two different fields. That's not head-to-head. It's trying to do it in the same field beside each other under the same conditions.
Most common question I get is, besides what Trent and Todd are saying, is where can I buy seed? And so we often direct people to look at the list of seed growers in the back of the seed guide, or you can go to SeCan.com and click on our varieties and on our website and on our varieties and find a list of seed growers there. So we try to find seed that's as close to you as possible. And if you're having trouble, you can always give any of us a call, or all our contact information's on SeCan.com, and we can help you find a seed grower or a retailer in your local area.
So there's a question here in the chat from Mike Rain. So what does the HRSW pipeline look like? We are seeing some step change yield improvements. Now, where do we go?
Well, normally what we look for is, our hope is that we maintain about 1/2 to 3/4% yield improvement per year. So we can see if plant breeders have adequate resources, they can maintain a slowly increasing yield potential over time. The odd time we'll get these jump ups like we have in Wheatland and Starbuck, which sort of set a new yield plateau, and then we have to all the breeders have to struggle to say, okay, now I've got to meet or beat that yield. So everyone is going to be trying to at least meet or beat Wheatland and Starbuck for yield potential. So we might not have the big yield gains for a year or two until the breeders can kind of rejig their breeding programs to incorporate Wheatland and Starbuck as parents in their program. But if we can just maintain resources to the breeders, we'll continue hopefully to see these small step improvements in either yield, straw strength, or disease resistance.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to add to Jim's comments. I think he's right. You keep the resources going, and then every once in a while you get these breakthroughs that change things, and then they become parents and stepping stones for the next period of time until the next big step. And so yeah, it goes along fairly just flat, small gains, and then a big step. And that's you don't get those home runs all the time, but when they happen, it's pretty cool.
Awesome. So Jim, you shared a lot of new varieties with all of us today. I'm interested to hear from everybody what their favorite one is of the new variety and why. Like, why does it matter to farmers? Why does it matter to your area? So maybe we'll start with Trent.
For me, it's AEC Wheatland VB. So I've gotten to see it in the field the last couple of years. And I was lucky enough to have it in a research trial. It yields, it stands, the protein's pretty good on it. And it's kind of that all-around package, and it's got the addition of midge tolerance, which you really haven't had, that really short, strong straw midge tolerant for Alberta. It's kind of everything in one package for me. So I'm really, really excited about it. And I've actually promoted it a lot to my members because I think it's a real good variety for Alberta.
For me, it's I'm in the Eastern Prairies, so from Winnipeg, grew up in Manitoba, and Fusarium's the top of mind for me. And so AAC Starbuck VB is the product I'm most excited about. Much like Trent says, though, it's everything all in one package. So it's short, it's strong straw, has an MR to Fusarium, low DON accumulation, and midge tolerance. And so when we started with midge tolerant varieties 10 years ago, one of the first comments was, well, they're a little tall. And it's taken breeders the last generation, essentially, to put that all into one package. And that's what we have in AAC Starbuck. And so a lot of excitement here in Manitoba, and retailers already talking about selling out quickly. So it's a cool product.
For me, I'm quite excited about the potential for a new two-row malting barley variety like CDC Fraser to potentially take over the market for the market niche that Metcalfe and Copeland have occupied. These varieties are hard to get established. It takes time to get them going. But when you start with a variety that has improved straw strength, improved yield, very, very good quality, low grain protein, that's an exciting package to start working with. And if we can get them, if we can achieve market acceptance, those varieties can live for 20 years. Something like AC Metcalfe is about 20 years old now. So these varieties live a long time if we can get them established in the market and accepted by the end users. So I'm excited to get those varieties rolling and see where they go.
Awesome. So there's another question in the chat here. So FHV resistant improvements are incremental, or are we waiting for something bigger on the horizon?
I can answer that one really easy. We're all hoping for that R, but it's a work in progress. Jim will know the science behind it. Todd's worked in it for 25 years. It's baby steps.
Fusarium resistance, if we look at durum right now, it's not very resistant. And so the big, huge leap forward is if we could actually achieve intermediate resistance to Fusarium head blight in durum. That would be a step change. Right now, everything is rated as MS, or moderately susceptible. So Fusarium resistance, it is a complex trait. There's several genes we've identified in hard red spring wheat to help us. We're learning more about it all the time. There's only one variety registered that had a resistant rating, or an R rating, and that was AC Tenacious, a CPS red wheat, very, very tall wheat. A lot of crosses have been made to Tenacious to help us perhaps achieve something a little bit better than an MR, just a very strong MR, but it takes a lot of time because of the complexity of the trait. It's hard to select for it in the breeding program, and we need very good nurseries in the field, and you don't always get a very good nursery because if you have drought or if you don't have irrigation, you don't see expression of, or you don't see the infestation of Fusarium head blight. So there's many different factors that slow down the progress in developing Fusarium head blight resistance, but there's been a lot of money put into it because it's a very, very important key trait to develop.
And the thing with Fusarium head blight, it's a disease that's studied around the world. It's not just a Western Canadian or Canadian thing. So there's research scientists and breeders all over the world that have been working with resistance for a long time. So what Jim says about the complexity, it's all that and I think more.
So I agree with both what Trent and Jim have said about the complexity and the difficulty and the time at this end. But yes, we've made some progress. And so if you look across some of the stronger products, not only are they rated as you see more and more MRs are kind of table stakes for the strong products in many areas across Canada. But if you look at the DON accumulation that is part of that rating, in the early stages, an MR may still accumulate dawn at a higher rate, which is not great from a feed or a food perspective. But the newer products have a good rating plus a low dawn accumulation, which makes them that much more powerful of a tool to fight the disease.
Awesome. So we have about 15 minutes left, and just while we wait to see if there's any more questions, is there any kind of final comments that any of you guys want to make to all the attendees that are watching today?
I'd just like to say thanks for joining us. Hope our presentation was informative. It's a lot of information to take in. And so if you have any more questions, feel free to go to SeCan.com and look up our contact information, and you can email us or phone us anytime. We're happy to talk to people about new crop varieties.
Yeah, I just want to echo what Jim said. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Reach out to us if you have questions about agronomics or other industry issues. Give us a shout. We're here. And hopefully next year we can see you back at AIM.
Yeah, and I just want to thank SeCan for participating in Ag in Motion Discovery Plus, hosting these roundtables. They've been very informative. I encourage all attendees to check out the SeCan crop plot tours, as well as their exhibitor booth in the exhibitor showcase. And I'm pretty sure you can find Jim, Trent, or Todd, or some of their colleagues in the crop plot tour or in the booth. So have a great Saturday. And with that, I think I'm going to let everybody have the rest of their Saturday back. So take care and talk to you all soon.
Have a great day.
Thanks, Caitlin.